Matt Slick fail. Logic, Part 4 of 4. Levels of logical inquiry. All quotes are copied from CARM.org under fair use terms. Here is a selection from CARM.org illustrating Matt Slick's assertion. Matt, if you do so based on logic, then you're using logic to defeat itself, which is not logical. We have shown previously that Matt Slick is committing the vicious circle fallacy when he uses this response. You can see under viciouscircleprinciple.com or the YouTube video that is posted here for an explanation of the vicious circle principle and the vicious circle fallacy. We should now explain another reason why the use of logic to show logical failures is not self-refuting. Consider the following statement. I can use logic to show that logic is illogical. On the face of it, it would seem that using logic against itself would show that logic is indeed logical, and therefore our statement would indeed be supporting the notion that logic is indeed logical rather than being illogical. However, this judgment would be premature. In fact, we can indeed use logic to show that logic is illogical, and such a process is indeed logical without being self-refuting. The reason we can use logic to show that logic is illogical is based upon the fact of different levels of logical inquiry. This video will explain those different levels of logical inquiry and why we can indeed use logic to show that logic is illogical, with no fear of being self-refuting nor illogical, to use Matt Slick's terminology. On the first level of logical inquiry, we discuss statements. As a simple example, A and B. In symbols, we display this as A ampersand B. We can talk about statements. When we talk about statements can be true or false, or more precisely, they are truth functionally true or truth functionally false. This is to say statements can function as true or function as false. This is to say logical statements can function as true and function as false. In fact, logic can be performed perfectly using truth functions of a statement regardless of the actual truth or falsity of a particular statement. The second level of logical inquiry is the level of inferences and arguments. Inferences and arguments are not true or false. They are valid or invalid. As an example, if A, then B, A, therefore B. This inference is usually called modus ponens. This is a valid inference and argument. This is to say that if 1 and 2 are true, truth functionally true, then the conclusion must be truth functionally true. We do not refer to inferences or arguments like modus ponens as true or false, but valid or invalid. Now consider, if A, then B, not B, therefore not A. This example is an invalid inference or invalid argument. It is invalid because 1 and 2 can both be truth functionally true, and the conclusion does not necessarily have to be truth functionally true. Again, inferences and arguments are not truth functionally true or false, like statements, but they are valid or invalid. The next level of logical inquiry is the level of logical systems. There are many different logical systems that have been developed. Logical systems are evaluated among other requirements. Consistency. Does the logical system yield a contradiction as true? Completeness. Can every property of the system be derived in the system? And rigor. Is A always A and never not A? Logical systems are not evaluated as valid or invalid as inferences and arguments are, nor are logical systems referred to as truth functionally true nor truth functionally false as statements are. Thus, when we use logic to evaluate a logical statement to be truth functionally false, or a logical inference to be invalid, or a logical system to be inconsistent, we can indeed use logic to say that statement or inference or logical system is illogical. We can indeed use logic in all of these things without ever being illogical or self-refuting. Matt Slick has once again shown his ignorance of logic and logical inquiry. He does not recognize that when we rise through the different levels of logical inquiry, from statement to inference and argument to logical systems, And on each level, we can use logic to show that logic is indeed logical or illogical, including using logic to defeat logic. And we can do this without ever being self-refuting nor illogical. In fact, this is a necessary function of logic, to execute evaluations against itself to demonstrate whether it is logical or illogical. We should also observe Matt Slick frequently responds to these sorts of objections by resorting to the vicious circle fallacy. You can go to www.viciouscircleprinciple.com or refer to the link in this slide for an explanation of the vicious circle principle and the vicious circle fallacy. Please remember, Matt Slick has no formal training in logic nor critical thinking. The ignorance and incompetence of logic we have shown here should not be surprising.